I'm about to tell you a story that goes beyond any horror movie, a story that's terrifying because it's real. It's about a young woman named Anneliese Michel, whose exorcism became one of the most disturbing cases in history. It's a tale of faith, fear, possession, and unimaginable suffering. As we dive into this nightmare, remember, these events actually happened. Anneliese Michel was born in Germany in 1952. She grew up in a devoutly Catholic household, attending Mass regularly with her family. By all accounts, Anneliese was a bright, joyful girl, loved by her parents and her community. But by the time she was 16, everything began to change. One night, she experienced her first strange episode. Her body became rigid, and she couldn't move. She felt an overwhelming weight pressing her down, unable to cry out for help. When she tried to speak, her voice was gone. The terrifying event lasted for minutes, but it felt like hours to Anneliese. Not long after, Anneliese began experiencing terrifying visions. She saw demonic faces everywhere, on walls, in the mirror, and even in her dreams. These faces would sneer and growl, haunting her relentlessly. It became impossible for her to focus on school or her normal life. And then, the voices started, whispering at first, but then growing louder, more sinister. By the time she turned 18, Anneliese's condition worsened. Doctors diagnosed her with epilepsy and depression, prescribing her medication to help control the seizures. But no matter how many pills she took, the voices, the visions, and the overwhelming sense of dread continued to worsen. The faces became more frequent. The whispers turned into violent, hateful growls, screaming in her mind, telling her she was damned, that she was cursed. Her family was desperate. They turned to their faith for answers, but nothing seemed to help. Anneliese would fly into violent rages, screaming at religious objects, tearing at rosaries, and even smashing crucifixes. She would speak in strange, guttural voices, mocking her parents and spitting out words in languages she had never learned. She claimed that demons were inside her, multiple entities vying for control of her soul. Over time, Anneliese's behavior grew more erratic and terrifying. She refused to eat because the voices told her all food was from hell. She would drop to her knees and crawl around the floor, barking like a dog, snarling at her family and growling like an animal. She began drinking her own urine and eating insects, her body becoming more gaunt and frail with each passing day. Her parents, devout Catholics, were convinced that she wasn't just sick, she was possessed. After years of seeking medical help to no avail, the Michel family turned to the church. Two priests, Father Arnold Renz and Father Ernst Alt, agreed to perform the exorcism rites in secret. They believed that Anneliese was under the control of multiple demonic entities, including Lucifer himself, Cain, Judas, and other damned souls. In September 1975, the first exorcism session began. It was nothing like the movies. This was real, raw, and horrifying. Anneliese, already frail, would thrash violently as the priests recited prayers. She spoke in multiple voices, growling and screaming, laughing maniacally in tones that didn't sound human. At times, her voice would switch mid-sentence, from that of a young girl to something far more ancient and malevolent. One of the most terrifying moments occurred when Anneliese began speaking in languages she had never learned. Latin, ancient Greek, and even Aramaic, the language of Christ. Her voice would shift, deepening unnaturally, making everyone in the room freeze in fear. She would call the priests by name, revealing secrets about them she couldn't have known, mocking their faith. As the exorcisms continued, Anneliese's health deteriorated rapidly. She refused to eat, claiming that the demons wouldn't allow her to. Her body became skeletal, her skin pale and bruised. But despite her physical weakness, during the exorcisms, she would display unnatural strength. Her family and the priests watched in horror as she contorted her body, bending in ways that shouldn't be humanly possible. She would howl, scream, and beg for mercy one moment, then switch to taunting everyone in the room the next. There were over 67 exorcism sessions over the course of 10 months, each one lasting hours. The family kept the sessions secret, but the sounds of Anneliese's screams could be heard by neighbors. During the rituals, She spoke about horrifying visions of hell, describing the torments of the damned in graphic, chilling detail. Her parents and the priests watched helplessly as Anneliese seemed to slip further and further away, trapped in a nightmare that no one could wake her from. By June 1976, Anneliese's body was failing. She weighed just 68 pounds, her face sunken, her eyes hollow and distant. On June 30th, during her final exorcism, Anneliese whispered her last words to the priests. "Please, absolution." Then turning to her mother, she said softly, "Mother, I'm afraid." The next morning, Anneliese Michel was found dead in her bed. The official cause of death was starvation and malnutrition, but those who had witnessed her torment knew it was far more than that. They believed her body had finally succumbed to the demonic forces that had possessed her for so long. The case of Anneliese Michel shocked the world. Her parents and the priests were charged with negligent homicide, accused of allowing her to die when she could have been saved by medical treatment. During the trial, tapes from the exorcism sessions were played, revealing the horrifying sounds of Anneliese's screams, her guttural voices, and the chilling conversations between her and the priests. To this day, the case remains one of the most controversial exorcism stories in history. Some believe Anneliese was mentally ill, a victim of misdiagnosis and extreme religious belief. Others believe she truly was possessed by demonic entities, her soul trapped in a battle between good and evil. No matter what you believe, the story of Anneliese Michel remains one of the most terrifying real-life horror stories ever told. And as you sit there, wondering what really happened, just remember, sometimes the truth is far scarier than fiction.